Ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome Pam Ayres.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello. How are you? Good. Well, I'm very pleased to be back at the Theatre Royal Windsor. It's one of my favourite theatres. I think it's really beautiful and it's lovely to see so many people here. So a very warm welcome to everybody and thank you very much for coming. Tonight I'm going to do something which I don't usually do, and that is I'm going to look back just for a little while, because last year was my 35th anniversary since I started out in show business, and 35 years ago last year I went on a television talent show called Auditioning, hosted by a genial bloke called Hughie Green, and so I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about my experience, particularly as Britain's Got Talent and the X Factor are so popular now and people like watching TV talent shows. And I must say that when I watch talent shows and I see acts come out, particularly the ones on their own, I feel for them, I do, because I know what it's like. And it was very, very frightening to get out there and do your bit. And if you wanted to go on the programme that I went on, which was, as I say, Opportunity Knocks, you had to fill in a form and state upon the form what you did. And I wrote writer and reciter of humorous verse. And I sent it off and I thought, well, that's the last I'll hear of that. But anyway, to my great surprise and pleasure, I got a letter back quite quickly inviting me to go for an audition in Birmingham. And I had never been to Birmingham in my life. I was 27 years old. I'd never been to Birmingham. And I took great pains with what I wore. I wore a pair of black trousers, a white shirt, and a highly fashionable red tartan smock, in which I looked at least 9 months pregnant, and I found my way to this hotel, and it was a tired old hotel. It'd seen better days, and it had a horrible smell of damp frostiness about it, and I had to find my way down into the ballroom where the auditions were held. And when you got down into the ballroom, the smell of damp was even more intense, and you saw 3 things that hit you straight away. The first of these was a long table at which were seated 3 judges. There was the producer of the programme, a man called Keith Beckett, he was in the middle, and then there was a lady on each side of him, and one of them had a stopwatch. Because you were told to prepare 3 minutes, that was all you had, you just had 3 minutes. And so anyway, there they all were, and hanging above them, suspended from the ceiling by chains, was a great big notice which looked rather unfriendly, and it said, "Only successful candidates will be notified by letter." I suppose that was to stop you going up and saying, "What did you think of me act?" Anyway, in front of the judges, under their sign, there was a solitary stand microphone, and that was where you had to go and do your bit. And it looked like the loneliest old place on God's earth in front of that microphone. And then round the rest of the ballroom, there were those little gilt chairs that you find in ballrooms. And there were people like me, people who'd gone along for the audition, all huddled in little groups along the chairs. And over the whole proceedings, there was this distinctive smell. Fear, it was. It was fear and dread. And when it was my turn, I got up and I went up to the microphone and I did a piece called "I Wish I Looked After Me Teeth," you see. And the thing was, I didn't expect them to laugh. I thought these people aren't going to laugh because they're going around every day of the week and they're watching people trying to be funny, so whatever they feel, they're not going to betray anything on their faces, they just keep a blank face. And so I was really pleased when I saw that they'd started to laugh. And the lady with the stopwatch forgot to turn it on. So I was really pleased, because I hadn't expected that. And at the end, they asked me to stay behind. So anyway, I went and sat down on my own and waited until everybody else had had an audition. And then they asked me if I had anything else. And I said, yeah. How much do you want? And I got up and I did a poem called Pam Ayres and the Embarrassing Experience with the Parrot. And at the end, the producer, Keith Beckett, he came over to me and he said something. And I think when you look back upon your life, you see moments at which it turned and went off in a different direction, don't you? And don't you? Yes, you do. And this was such a case for me because he walked over to me and he said the deathless words. He said, "Who writes this stuff?" And I said, "Well, I do." And do you know what he said? He said, "Well, you're certainly on the show." Yeah, there's this great big sign up saying only successful candidates will be notified. He said, "You're certainly on the show." He said, "Because you are the one thing that we look for all the time and we hardly ever find." He said, "Yes, somebody doing something different." And I was so chuffed. I cannot tell you how pleased I was. And when I walked out of that old hotel, it was the most beautiful, well-preserved hotel I had ever seen in my life. Because I was so relieved, really, because people thought I was very odd to go on a talent show with a poem. You know, it didn't sound very likely, does it? Opportunity Knocks was responsible for bringing up some very, very good entertainers, some terrific entertainers who entertained us for years and decades. But at the same time, I think it has to be said that there were quite a lot of naff acts. Weren't there? I mean, there was one man that I remember who used to come on and beat himself on the head with a tin tray to music. Well, that was a classy act. And then there was another man who was really famous who used to come on stripped apart from a little thong with his whole body painted silver, and he used to come on and strike a pose like the thinker, like that, and then he would twitch his muscles to music. Well, not all of them like, but you know. The ones you could see, like. And people had been quite nasty about me going on Opportunity Knocks. You know, some of my friends at work thought it was very odd, and one of them said to another one of my friends, he said, "I've gone right off that Pam Ayres, now she's gone on that stupid television programme." You know, and there were things like that said, which was sort of hurtful, because I had quite a good job. You know, because of my accent, everybody seems to think that I spend most of my time sitting under a haystack with a pitchfork in one hand and a flagon of cider in the other saying, "OR," but Actually, that wasn't the case, because I had a good job, my dears. I was in the civil service. Yeah, thank you very much. I've got 120 words a minute Pitman shorthand. Thank you very much, you see. And when my dad found out that I was going on the programme, even he wasn't very supportive, really. He came up to me, I was drying my hands on the towel in the kitchen, and he came up to me and he said, "What are you going to do then on this TV show? What are you going to do?" I said, "Oh, well, I'm going to say a poem." He said, "You ain't got a snowball's chance in hell." I said, I don't think he was trying to be mean, you know, I don't think he was. I think he was trying to protect me from coming a cropper, which it sounded as if I might do. So anyway, when Keith Beckett said to me, "You're on, you're just what we're looking for," you know, I was absolutely ecstatic, and I walked out of that old place walking on air. And the next thing that happened was I was called up for the actual programme. And for this, I had to go to Thames Television. And this was a very, very exciting moment for me because, you know, I'd been on in the Village Institute and numerous folk clubs and things like that. But to actually go into a professional television studio and to be shown into a dressing room, there was a table and a chair and a mirror with all the lights around it. You know, it was very exciting because you thought, this is the real thing. And we spent the whole day rehearsing down on the studio floor. And there were about 8 or 9 of us, I suppose, who'd got through the audition. And everybody had been given a set, you know, a performance area, which it was hoped would enhance their performance. And there was a young man on the show who looked very much like Gene Pitney, and he was singing a Gene Pitney song. In fact, I think it might have been 24 Hours from Tulsa, that song. You remember that song, don't you? Yeah. And anyway, they gave him this wonderful set to perform in front of. And when I saw it, I thought it was the epitome of showbiz glamour, I did. Because he came on singing his song, and they stood him in front of a slash curtain I don't know if you know what a slash curtain is, but I will explain that it's made of strips of aluminium foil in all different colours, and they twist and turn and catch the light. You see them in tawdry nightclubs. Well, you wouldn't have seen them, but they can be seen. And out of sight, where nobody could see, at home on the television, there was a man with a rusty cylinder and a set of bellows going like this, you see. And he was puffing dry ice round the feet of the singer. Oh, wow, I thought, I hope when it's my turn that I will be given something similar. Well, dream on, mush, because when it was my turn, they said, Pam, if you'd like to come this way, if you'd just like to come over here, we've prepared a set for you. Well, I'd seen it. I thought it was where they all sat to have a cup of tea. He said, this is what we've prepared for you. And it was an old comfy armchair, a sort of wing armchair. And next to it, there was a little table with a lamp and a teapot with a knitted tea cosy. I looked at it and I thought, I don't want that. And I was horrified, and I said to the man, I don't like that very much. Do you think I could stand in front of the slash curtain, and have the dry ice? He said, oh, no, I'm afraid not. He said, because we feel this will enhance your homely personality, you see. And so that was it. I was stuck with it. Anyway, we rehearsed all through the day, and everybody got really nervous because the show was going to happen that night. It was coming on, and nothing was going to stop it. And as the evening drew on, so everybody's guests and friends began to turn up. And my family had very loyally got together a busload from the village. They'd got up a whole busload, and in order to do this, they had approached a local coach hire company from Didcot, Crapper's Coaches. So. Everybody thinks I'm making this up, but I'm not. They approached Crapper's Coaches, and so everybody else's friends and family were arriving in buses and saloon cars and that sort of thing, minibuses, and then this great big coach pulled up, and emblazoned all along the side it said, Crappers, and all my family's heads were looking out the window. Anyway, they all came in, everybody filed into the studio, and the great big doors were closed, and the show started. And I have never, ever been so frightened in my whole life. Everybody had their turn, and then it was my turn. And it's sort of, there's nothing relaxing about it at all. When it's your turn, this great big camera, the cameras were much bigger then, they're much more dinky now, but then they were huge, great things. And when it was your turn, the camera swung from where it was over there, round in front of you, and there's a red light goes on the top, and the floor manager comes out and counts you down. He goes, and you're on. And I was so frightened. My one thought was that everybody at home could see my heart beating. I thought I'd sit there like this. I was so frightened. Anyway, I did a poem called Pam Ayres and the Embarrassing Experience with a Parrot. And the reason I chose that was because I think it's got a good end. And I think it's important, if you're trying to write something funny, to have a really strong end. It doesn't matter if it's got a good beginning and a good middle. If it hasn't got a good end, it's not going to work, because that's what people remember. So this is it. Then I'll do the poem for you, and then you'll know what I'm talking about. This is called The Embarrassing Experience with the Parrot, and in it I impersonate a dying parrot, which is a very poignant theatrical experience. This did actually happen, except I've embroidered the end slightly. At the Cotswold Wildlife Park in the merry month of May, I paid the man the money and went in to spend the day. Straightway to the pet's corner, I turned my eager feet to go and see the rabbits and give 'em something to eat. But as I approached the hutches, I was alarmed to see a gang of little yobbos, all hollering with glee. Well, I crept up quiet behind them, and I weighed the scene up quick, and I saw them poke the rabbits, poke 'em with a stick. "Get off, you little devils," I shouted in their ear. "Don't you poke them rabbits, that's not why they are here." Well, I must have really scared them, for in seconds they had gone, and feeling I had done some good, I carried on along, till up beside the parrot's cage I stood to view the scene. Oh, they were lovely parrots, beautiful blue and green, in and out of the nest box. They were really having fun, squawking out and flying about, all except for one. One poor old puffed up parrot clung grimly to his perch, and as the wind blew frontwards, backwards he would lurch. 1 foot up in his feathers, abandoned by the rest, he sat there plainly dying, with his head upon his chest. That was it. So I walked on down the pathway and I stroked a nanny goat. But the thought of parrots dying brought a lump into my throat. I could no longer stand it, and to the office I fled. Politely I began, "Excuse me, your parrot's nearly dead." Well, me and a curator, in urgent leaps and bounds, with a bottle of parrot cure, we dashed across the grounds, and the dust flew up around us as we reached the parrot's pen. And the curator, he turned to me, saying, "Which one is it then?" Well, you know what I'm going to say. He wasn't there at all. At least not where I left him. No, he flew from wall to wall. As brightly as a button did he squawk and jump and leap. Well, the curator was very kind, saying, "I expect he was asleep." But I was humiliated as I stood before the wire. The curator went back to put his feet up by the fire. So I let the parrot settle. And after a short search, I found the stick the yobbos had. And I poked him off his perch. Well, anyway, that was the poem. And then after I'd done it and the show ended, I went and got my things out of the smart dressing room, and I got on the crapper's coach and I went home. And then the show went out on this Saturday. And of course I didn't look anything like I thought I was going to look like. I thought I was going to look cool and urbane. And of course I didn't. But anyway, the show went out on the Saturday. And then if you'd done any good, you were notified by the following Thursday by the tea time. And the Thursday came and I was sitting at work and the phone didn't ring and the phone didn't ring. And then right at the end of the day, as everybody was packing up to go home, I was called out to this great big office outside, this big general office. It was a massive great office with a big clock on the wall that everybody used to watch and hope that it would go round fast so they could go home. And it was a place where people did boring old jobs, you know, like credit control and statistics and all that sort of thing. And nobody wanted to be there. Anyway, the phone rang out there for me and I went out and I picked up the phone and it was Keith Beckett, the producer of the programme. And he was very flamboyant in his manner, very sort of larger than life. And he said, "You've won, darling." He said, "You've won, darling." And I put the phone down and everybody knew I'd gone in for the programme. And I said in a very small voice, I said, "I've won." And this massive, great, spontaneous cheer went up, this enormous, great whoop went up in this cold old office because one of us had managed to escape. One of us had gone over the wire, you know. And it was just a lovely moment, this great whoop that went up because I'd managed to get out. So it was lovely, really, and I'd won. And then there was a very funny time then, because everybody kept telling me I'd made it. So people kept coming up to me and saying, "Well, you're made. Now you're made. You've made it." Even my mum said to me, she said, "Well, old gal, you've made it." No, it's a really queer thing because you didn't know what was supposed to happen next. You know, I was offered a panto in Jersey for 200 quid, but I couldn't say that was the pinnacle of my ambitions, really. You know, I had to pay the rent, I was single. And so I didn't know what was sort of supposed to happen next. Everybody seemed to expect something enormous to happen, but you weren't sure what. Anyway, the thing that happened for me that made a huge difference was that I was offered a television commercial for a company called Eden Vale, a dairy company. I think they're still around, aren't they? I think so. And they asked me if I would advertise a full fat cream cheese that they produced. You know, it's the sort that clogs your arteries. I didn't have to say that in the advert, of course. Anyway. And they wanted me to write a little verse. And so all it was, I had to have this Ritz cracker all piled up with cheese, and I had to come shimmying down through this make-believe kitchen and say my little verse to the camera. And for this is extraordinary, because at that time I was earning, I had a good job, but I was only earning sort of 23 pounds a week. And for this advert, I was offered £600. And I never had anything like that in my life. It was like winning the pools, really it was. And I thought, I'm going to do the best I possibly can and write something really good for all that money. So this is what I wrote. Here's the biscuit. I always choose Eden Vale. It's natural and it's nice. There's one thing better than having it once. I bet you can't guess what comes next. And that is having it twice. Thank you very much. And so anyway, I thought if anybody's going to pay me 600 quid for that, I'm going to take the money and get out quick before they change their mind. And so I left my office job on Friday the 13th of February 1976, and I never looked back. I will never regret my decision, and I just thought to myself, well, I've earned £600, and now I'll just see how long I can make it last. And so far it's lasted for 35 years, so it's doing quite well. Anyway, that's enough about that old stuff. I'm going to do some new things for you now so you can see what I'm up to at the moment. I've been writing quite a lot of poems about birds. As a matter of fact, this is one about feeding the birds. It's greenfinches that eat the most. You could serve them up as a Sunday roast. That's all I've done of that one, but... Oh, there's this one. This is another one I wrote. This is slightly longer. I wrote this after I read an article in the newspaper about the town of Aldborough in Suffolk. And in this article it said that the seagulls were such a nuisance and such a threat to public health that people were likely to be fined anything up to £2,500 for feeding the seagulls. These draconian fines had been introduced to try and stop people from doing it. And when I read it, I thought, well, what a lot of money. You know, and when it comes to feeding the seagulls, you haven't always got a choice. The seagull sits like all his creed, pink of leg and bony kneed, yellow eye prospecting hard for any tourist off his guard. Down below a pleasant scene, a family by the sea washed clean with fish and chips upon their laps. Dad stands to take some family snaps, but before his lens a creature flies. Father can't believe his eyes. Enraged he bellows, "Oh my God, a seagull's had me battered cod." A vile curse pollutes his lips. "The bastards had me fish and chips." On high the bird, triumphant, sleek, smacks his vinegary beak. This is another one I'm working on. This is an optimistic look at the future. It's called Count Me Out. In hospitals now, you risk MRSA, and under your bedstead the cockroaches play. If you don't clutch your kidneys, they'll have them away. So count me out. Euthanasia's coming, it's too late to run. Hear the last loving words of a daughter or son. You've outstayed your welcome now, Ma. Here's a gun. So count me out. I rang the police. You must help me, I said. An axe man is aiming an axe at my head. He'll have had a rough childhood. Don't hurt him, they said. So count me out. I'm also launching a one-woman campaign to increase the age of women selling makeup in department stores. Because they all look about 11. And I feel hesitant in approaching them to ask them about my problems, because they look so perfect. I went to buy a lipstick and I hoped for some advice in choosing an attractive shade to make my face look nice. I stepped up to the counter in me trainers and me Mac. But the sales assistant saw me and she vanished out the back. She was absolutely flawless and an advertiser's dream. She was icy as a glacier and chic in the extreme. I was clearly not the customer that she desired to meet. I could have been some reptile that had crawled in off the street. And I thought I'd find the manager and have a little word in favour of an altogether craggier old bird. Some game old gal who's been around the block a time or three, who is fending off the years and has a waist as thick as me. An understanding confidant with whom you could relax, who knows the way that lipstick tends to bleed into the cracks. A saviour for those of us who know our youth is past, to show us all the tricks and keep us fighting to the last. I have to wear glasses now, you know. Yeah, I thought I was going to be one of these people who didn't have to wear them, but I'm not. I do have to wear glasses, and I don't like them. I mean, I'm glad I've got them, otherwise I wouldn't be able to read, and I really like reading. One of the main reasons why I don't like them is because I can never find the damn things. You know, and I go traipsing round and round our house, and I look everywhere. I think, did I leave them in the kitchen when I was reading that recipe? No. Did I leave them up by the bed when I was watching the telly? No. I leave them downstairs when I was doing my knitting? No. I go round and round the house, and it enrages me because I'm wasting time that I don't want to waste. And my family are very odd, really. You know, if they lost their glasses, if my husband or my two sons lost their glasses, I would try and help them. You know, I would. I'd try and help them. I'd say, where might you have had them last? I would say, I'd go along the coats, patting the pockets to see if they've left them in their pockets. Or I'd say, might you have left them in the car? You know, I'd try and help. But if it's me who's lost my glasses, they're very aggressive. I don't know why that is. They say, oh, God almighty, not again. You've never lost your glasses again. You're always losing your glasses. I don't know why you don't hang them round your neck, they say. I could if I wanted to. I've got one of these fancy chains whereby you can hang them round your neck, but I don't like it. I feel matronly in it. You know, I don't feel like a cool poetry chick with my glasses hanging around me. And when you lean forward, they swing out like this. The glasses. And So anyway, I thought, why don't I try and come up to date, you know, try and move into the modern age and get myself some contact lenses. Everybody else seems to do it, don't they? And I had one of these conversations like you have with yourself. So I'm saying, so half of me saying, yes, I'll get some contact lenses and then I won't be a slave to those glasses anymore. And then the other half says, yeah, I know, but you've got to finger your own eyes. Have you thought about that? And then this half said, yeah, I know, but other people seem to overcome those feelings. Why not you? All right, then I'll make an appointment. So I went to see the optician, and she's a very nice lady. She's very breathy in the way she speaks. And I said, my sons have got contact lenses, and I was hoping that I could get some as well. And she said, oh, yes. Said, yes, but unfortunately I can't prescribe the same ones for you because, of course, your requirement's totally different. But she said there are various things which we can try, and many of them have a substantial chance of success. She said, what I would recommend in your case is that we place one contact lens for short sight into one eye. I'm not making this up. And one contact lens for long sight in the other eye. She said, and the brain being such a prodigious organ, she said, will process the images and in 98 cases out of 100 will give you a perfectly acceptable result. She said, now, would you like me to pop them in? So I said, yes, please. So she popped them in, which took about 3/4 of an hour. And then she said, now, have you got any shopping to do? I said, yes, I have. I've got to go to Marks and Sparks next door. She said, well, that's perfect. That's perfect. So you go and do your shopping and then pop back and let me know how you've got on. So I said, right. So I went into Marks and Spencer's next door. All I can say is it was a good thing I had a trolley to hold on to because I must have looked like Tina Turner going on like this because I couldn't see. I couldn't see. I had all these shafts of light coming into my vision and I was completely disorientated. And as I went round the store, I could hear people saying, there goes Pam Ayres, look, she's on something, they said. And I didn't even finish my shopping. I went back round to the optician and I said, look, I'm obviously one of the 2% is just not going to work for. Please take them out because I can't see and I don't like it. So she took them out and I had to pay £60 for the consultation and I went home completely empty-handed. Except, perhaps, for this. I place it on my finger like a little Pyrex bowl. Surprisingly, I'm nervous, not entirely in control. My pulse has started racing, and my mouth is going dry. But I'm going to take this contact lens and stick it in my eye. Yes, I've placed it on my fingertip, but now awash with doubt. Is the thing the right way up? Or back to front, or inside out? And someone always mentions, as you angle it in vain, that it might travel round your eyeball and be never seen again. Now, my eyelids start to flicker as the shaking finger nears. Protectively, they wink and blink and squint away the tears. Then, oh no! Disaster strikes. A spasm flicked it on my lap. This little piece of polythene, this little crumpled scrap. And if you lose a lens, it's more traumatic than you'd think. I've seen frantic people clawing at the plug hole of the sink. People in their underwear, people in the buff, crawling round the carpet, analysing bits of fluff. But I won't give up, not even if it takes me half the night. With my magnifying mirror and enormous blinding light. You may be queuing for the bathroom, I don't care how much time passes. For when I see you next, I'll be the one without the glasses. Something nasty happened to me along the Panama Canal, you know. It's not many people can say that. No, I was on the P&O ship Oriana. I was entertaining the passengers, and we were going along the Panama Canal, or at least we were approaching the Panama Canal. And as you probably know, on these cruise ships, they carry a lecturer, a port lecturer, and it's always worth going to see what the person has to say, because you can gain a great deal of information which enhances your visit. So for instance, if you're coming up to a port, they'll tell you what kind of things are good value to buy to take home as souvenirs. They'll tell you where to go and where not to go to avoid getting mugged and getting into trouble, and they'll tell you a bit about the history of the place. And so it's all good stuff before you get there. And there was a talk on the Panama Canal, and I went to the talk and I was fascinated. It was a lady lecturer, and she said in the humid conditions that prevailed, it was perfectly possible that we would be able to see, basking in the sun along the shores of the Panama Canal, wild alligators. And I was fascinated because I'm very interested in wildlife, and in all my life I had never seen a wild alligator, but I knew what to look for because I'd seen me granny's handbag. Anyway, I didn't want to miss seeing these alligators. And so, as we came into the beginning of the Panama Canal, into these monumental locks called the Gatun locks, I got up on the rail because I thought once they appear, then people are going to be 6 deep and I won't be able to see anything. So I got in a good position early on as we went into these monumental lock chambers of the Gatun locks. And we went in, and they are vast, these locks. And coming alongside us was another ship. And I happened to be on the rail, as I say, and I looked down and I happened to catch sight of the name of the other ship that was alongside us. It was called the Kenwood. Not the sort of name you'd forget, is it really? I kept looking at it to see if it had whipped up a Victoria sandwich, but it hadn't. Anyways, as I was looking down at it, I couldn't help noticing that suddenly it let out a great sort of like a clearing hoot from one of its chimneys, and it wasn't like a carry-on film. I didn't get a blackened face or anything, but it did send out into the air a cloud of smuts, and one of them went into my eye. All these sort of sooty bits came off of that chimney, and one of them went into my eye. And at first, it was just one of those things. I got something in my eye, and I did the things that you do when you've got something in your eye. I just twisted up a corner of my handkerchief, and I tried to get it out, and I couldn't. And it got a bit sore, and I spoke to my husband, and he said he'd help me, and he got his handkerchief out, and I had a look at it, and I said, no, it's all right, I'll manage on my own, thanks very much. Anyway, as we went on our journey, it got more and more uncomfortable, and every time I blinked, I could feel it scratching the surface of my eyeball, and it got really sore and red. And so, to my disbelief and great disappointment, as these alligators began to appear, as people were sprinting from one side of the ship to the other and exclaiming at what they could see, they were saying, oh, look, there's a big fat one down here, look! And then somebody over here would say, look, here's a family group with babies, come and have a look. And people were going from side to side. And I, to my intense disappointment, was making my way down through the windowless depths of the ship, down to the medical centre to get my eye sorted out. And I was so upset and peeved and narked. Right up until the moment when I walked into the doctor's surgery and saw the doctor. He was one of the most devastatingly handsome men I've ever seen in my whole life. All thoughts of alligators went straight out of my head. And I'm sure when I walked in, he was impressed when he saw me, because I came in like... When I went in, he stood up, and he was just the most splendid man. He stood up and he had the white uniform on and a wonderful suntan, not that old yellow fake stuff, but the real thing, a lovely suntan. And he looked a bit like James Bond when he was younger, Sean Connery when he played James Bond, with the lovely brown shiny hair and great broad shoulders with the medical insignia on the epaulettes, the red and gold and black, and he had a little waist and all this lovely white uniform and beautiful smouldering brown eyes like chocolate drops. I could have put my husband out with the rubbish. Anyway, he invited me to lie on the bed. I couldn't get up there quick enough. And he examined my eye. And he was very, very nice. I don't know about you, though. I always find having my eyes examined uncomfortable. I don't like that bit where they come at you with a little pointed light, like an icing nozzle with a little light at the end. Don't they come right up close to you, don't they? And they say, look up, look down, look to your left. And so they're really close to you as a complete stranger, and yet they're so close to you that you can feel their breath on your skin. I always find that excruciatingly embarrassing. However, on this occasion, it wasn't so bad. And he had a lovely voice, a lovely, beautiful voice. And he said, oh yes, oh yes. Said, I can see exactly what the problem is. I can see that you have a sharp particle embedded beneath your upper eyelid, and I would recommend, if you are agreeable, a perfectly simple, painless medical procedure that I introduce a saline wash. So I said, I'm agreeable, doctor. I am agreeable. You can introduce anything you like. It's perfect. So anyway, he removed it. He removed it, and I spent the rest of the journey through the Panama Canal up on deck trying to get a smirk in the other eye, but I didn't have any. This is a poem about two people and they've fallen out. There's a couple. And they have fallen out with each other. And the wife can't tell you what's been going on because it's not private enough. So you just have to see what you can glean by reading between the lines. All right, this is called A Slight How's Your Father? It's a bit like that at the moment. It's a bit better left well alone. You know, least said, soonest mended, when we're next on our own. Because we have had a slight how's your father. It's a touch of the old you-know-who. I found her here with him on Friday, and we had quite a to-do. Well, it's not that I blame him entirely. It's not what some people might think. And he has had his confidence shattered since the what's her name went on the blink. I mean, it was always a bit of a job. It was never 100%. He had several attacks of the doings. And the last time it just sort of went. I told him, don't bother about it. Just put it right out of your head. But he worried, you see, and he fretted. He scratched it, of course, and it spread. Wow. Oh. But it's her that I feel took advantage. She's not like him. She knows the score. She's always been fond of the need I say what with you-know-who. Need I say more? So we're both, as it were, treading lightly, and nobody's got much to say. We're all right, more or less, but I have to confess that it is a bit like that today. I was asked to a 60th birthday party recently, And if I was to be perfectly honest, I didn't want to go because I'm not much of a party person. I'm just not. Some people love parties. I'm not very good at parties, really. And when the evening came, I was perfectly happy where I was. I had no inclination to put on a tight frock and a pair of uncomfortable shoes and go tottering off to spend the whole evening in conversation with people in whom I had no interest. I don't want you to think I'm not the life and soul of the party. But actually, there was no way I wasn't going to go because it was my best friend and I wasn't going to let her down. And when I went, as it's so often the case when you're not looking forward to something, it was an absolute triumph. It was a real good night. And they had Mike Darbo and his band there, and they played all the old Rolling Stones numbers. They played Honky Tonk Woman and Can't Get No Satisfaction. And I don't know, I just felt in real good nick, and I danced and danced and danced. It was fantastic. I felt as though I was never going to get tired. And my husband got fed up and he went off, and so I danced with anybody who'd ask me. And when people didn't ask me anymore, I danced with my handbag. And I had a lovely, lovely time. But in the morning, it wasn't so good. Last night we went out to a party. We decided, we were dressed, and we were gone. It was only up the road at Roy and Brenda's. We were in a party mood, so bring it on. And though the bloke who played the keyboard started sagging, though the vocalist was ashen with fatigue, still on the floor the pair of us were dancing. Endurance, there was no one in our league. When we got up to do the locomotion, there was no one there could say we'd lost the knack. But this morning, as I tried to cross the landing, I feel as if I might have broke me back. Or it could be more a fracture of the pelvis. I can get about. I'm all right once I start. But I have to shuffle very, very slowly and keep me legs about 3 feet apart. Well, the addicts, they were clustered in the garden, lighting up their fags and their cigars. It was probably a clear and perfect evening, but the smoke was blocking out the moon and stars. They had a fella there just like Sinatra. I shouted, "Turn the volume up! Let's hear him sing!" But frankly, I'm coming to regret that, because this morning I can't hear a bloody thing. I never liked that niece of Roy and Brenda's, but later on when we were sitting down, I think I might have told her all my secrets. And this morning they'll be all across the town. Well, when the band had packed their gear into the transit and the cats were on the wreckage of the feast, we staggered up our road on Sunday morning, and the sun was slowly rising in the east. I don't know what was in that last libation, but I laughed fit to burst at everything I saw. Only now I can't remember what was funny, and I feel as if I might have broke me jaw. Me shoes are lying shattered on the carpet, where I kicked them off with loathing and relief. They were new at the beginning of the evening. Now I look at them with utter disbelief. With bloodshot eyes, I turn them in my fingers. One night was all it took to wear them out. In the bin they go on Sunday morning, never more to do the twist and shout. So far, no encounters with me husband, since we came singing up the stairs at 4:30. I couldn't say I'm feeling optimistic, because there's groaning from behind the bathroom door. Last night I was soaring like an eagle, but like Icarus I flew too near the sun. So this morning I am just a broken woman, devastated that me dancing days are done. I've been to France. Yeah, I've been to France on holiday. On a cycling holiday. No, I have, really. It's something I never thought I would enjoy. I never even thought about doing it. But I went and I really enjoyed it. But it's an interesting thing. If you tell your friends you're going on holiday, they usually say lovely supportive things, don't they? They say, well, you make sure you put your feet up and have a nice rest because you work hard and you jolly well deserve it. Oh, that's the sort of thing they say, don't they? Or they say, keep in touch, bring us back a souvenir. Or they say, oh, I've been there, you'll love it, it's lovely. And they say things like that, don't they, if you're going on an ordinary holiday, don't they? Yes, but if you tell them that you're going on a cycling holiday, they don't say things like that at all. Instead, a smirk appears on their face, and they sidle up to you and they say, well, mind you don't get a sore arse. So many people said that to me when I said I was going on a cycling holiday. Or if they didn't say that, they told me terrible jokes about cycling. I'll give you a few examples. You don't have to laugh. I'm just telling you for information. Why couldn't the man make his bicycle stand up? Because it was too tired. I'm having a terrible job with my dog. He chases anybody on a bike. What did you do? Well, I had to take his bike away. Or else lots of people said to me, if you're going on a cycling holiday, I hope you got your padded cycling shorts. And I thought about that, and I thought, well, I wonder if I do actually need some sort of equipment. I was going on a week cycling holiday, and I'd never done that before. And some of the people we were going with, some of our friends, were really fit. You know, one of them runs in the London Marathon, so he's seriously fit. And I didn't want to not take things I actually needed and then hold everybody up. So I thought I'd better get some information. And there's quite a good cycling shop in Cheltenham. So I went in there and I spoke to the man behind the counter. And I told him what I told you. I said, I'm going on this cycling holiday to France and I've never been before. And the other people are very fit. And I said, I want to ascertain what equipment I actually need. You know, not extraneous stuff that I don't need, just sort of gloss, but the basics. I said, now, do I need padded cycling shorts? I said, perhaps you could tell me a little bit about them. I don't know anything. How are they made? What are they supposed to protect you from exactly? Anyway, he turned out to be a pillock because he said... he said, you come round here, darling, I'll give you a guided tour. Well, I didn't hang about there, a respectable woman like me, so I went home and I Googled it. I Googled padded cycling shorts, which is what I should have done in the first place, because all this interesting information came up, you know, everything you could possibly want to know about them. And it turns out that the best ones, the really top quality padded cycling shorts, do you know what they're made of? Chamois. Chamois leather. They are really, the very top quality ones are made of chamois leather. And I thought that was quite useful, really. You know, if you don't want to go on a bike ride, you could take them off and clean all the windows. Anyway, we had a lovely time, really. We had a lovely time. We went along the Loire Valley, part of the Loire Valley, and we started off in a place called Chinon in France, and it's got a lovely castle, and they make very nice wine there. It's a very nice place to start from. And we had to go to the depot to pick up our bikes. You get in touch with the company a long time beforehand and send them your measurements and how tall you are and everything. So they got a bike that's going to be nice and comfortable for you, but you go along so they fine-tune it and adjust the saddle and the handlebars and all that. And when we got there was this man running the place, this depot, called Ron. And Ron gave us a demonstration of how to mend a puncture in case any of us didn't know. And he dished out maps of all the cycling tracks that we would be able to go on. And he gave us a talk about being chafed. Because if you're going on a cycling holiday, you do have to address the possibility that you could get painfully chafed. And this man, Ron, was trying to be helpful, but he had a rather unfortunate monosyllabic voice. You know, it was all on one level. And so even though he wasn't trying to be funny, it did sound hysterically funny. He said, "I recommend a precautionary application of antiseptic cream to the entire crutch area." And my husband said, "So you might, matey." He said, anyway, we had a lovely time, really, we did. We went along the levees of the Loire. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the levees. I wasn't. I'd heard the song "Take Your Chevy to the Levee," but I didn't actually know what a levee was. And so I will explain it to anybody who doesn't know. It's an artificial bank built to contain a river when it's in flood. So this is the river going along in the normal course of things, and then if it's in flood, they build these massive banks, wider than the stage in many cases, to contain the river so it doesn't go and do any damage. And along the top of these levees, in many places where we were, they've built beautiful cycling tracks, and they're surfaced with a fine sort of sandy material. So when you ride your bike along, it makes a lovely crackling sound under the tyres. It's really nice, and the trees have grown up on either side, so you can look between the tree trunks and you can see the sparkling surface of the Loire River and the beautiful castles. I mean, they're incredible fairy tale sort of castles. And when I looked in the brochure, I thought, oh, this is just a load of old twaddle for the tourists, because they showed pictures of people biking through fields of sunflowers and vineyards and lavenders and orchards. And I thought you couldn't possibly see all that, but actually we did. We actually did. It was so beautiful. And these lovely trees along the levees had grown right up and closed over the top of us and made a lovely cool tunnel out of the heat. And it was so beautiful that at one stage I thought I must write down my feelings, encapsulate my feelings about the place. And so I wrote down the following little verse. "Let's go on a cycling holiday. Let's all be jolly good sports, with insects all down the back of your throat and up the leg of your shorts." How about that? I look after our son's dogs, They've got two dogs. They've got a Labrador and a little fox terrier, and I've got two dogs of my own. I've got a large Munsterlander and a Jack Russell. And one day I was out walking with the dogs, and my son's Labrador is very excitable and bouncy. She's a very bouncy, energetic sort of a dog, but she doesn't like you to be out of her sight. She gets worried if you're out of sight. So anyway, I was walking along and I noticed that my Jack Russell Terrier was limping because she gets a lot of trouble with her dew claws, where they crack at the top and expose the quick, and it's agonisingly painful for the dog. And I noticed that she was limping along, this little dog, and so I stopped. I was on one side of the edge and Crumpet was on the other side. The Labrador called Crumpet was on the other side. And I stopped and I bent down to examine the paw, and then as I straightened up, because Crumpet hadn't been able to see me, she jumped over the edge. So as I straighten up, this dog comes flying over the edge, elbow first, and struck me in the temple. And I saw stars, because this is a big dog. And I stood there and I was reeling for some little while before I sort of got my balance back. And in the afternoon, I was going to watch my niece who plays the flugelhorn in a brass band. And I had this blinding headache, I had this splitting headache, and I thought, I'm going to have to go and get it checked, because they tell you to check it out, don't they, if you've had a blow to the head. And I imagined the conversation I might have with the doctor. With him saying, "How did you sustain the head injury, Mrs. Russell?" So, "Oh, I was hit by a flying crumpet." Come over here. Anyway, I do love my dogs very much. I've had a lot of joy from dogs in my life. We've always had a dog, but sadly their lifespan is shorter than ours. And you come to that horrible stage, that heartbreaking stage, where you lose your dog. And this is a little piece which I wrote about losing a dog. And it's about the things you miss that perhaps you didn't expect to miss. It's called Tippy Tappy Feet. The days are slowly passing since I found her still and prone, since I took her to the surgery and came back on my own. Now, as my key turns in the lock, the sound I miss the most of all are the tippy-tappy toenails as they skidded down the hall. Oh, there was something in the welcome. There was something in her style, in the jingle of her collar and ecstatic doggy smile. The tail that wagged so furious, the eyes that shone so bright. It's the silence. It's the silence. It is blacker than the night. And if I'd had a rotten day, if I was tired and spent, if I had found indifference in every place I went, always at my journey's end, when I was flat and lonely, that little dog convinced me I was someone's one and only. Her things are still around me. I have left them all alone. A little greasy collar, a yellow rubber bone, a hairy tartan blanket in her basket on the floor, from which she sprang to terrorize all knockers on the door. How grievous is the emptiness on entering the hall. How disproportionate, so great a loss for one so small. For the music it is missing, and my home is incomplete. The music of her tippy-tappy, doggy, dancing feet. That was rather sad, wasn't it? So I'll tell you something to cheer you up now. My sons have left home. No, I don't mean that in a nasty way. Of course I don't. Looking ahead a little bit, perhaps, I went to a lovely wedding in Kent a few weeks ago. And it was very beautiful. And a darling little Norman church it was. And the prunus, you know that prunus blossom that's all out now in the fields? It was all out around the church. And this sweet little church with the arched doorway, and the bride came out. And interestingly, you know, she was wearing her grandmother's dress. Her grandmother was freezing, but she said she didn't mind. No, she said she didn't mind at all. But I can't help thinking when I go to modern weddings how weddings have changed, because I'm the youngest child of 6. And when my brothers and sister got married, it was very simple, you know. It was a nice ceremony in the church, and somebody who was good with a needle would have made the wedding dress. Somebody in the village would have made it. It didn't necessarily cost a great deal of money. And somebody who was good at cake making would have made a nice wedding cake. And then you'd go to the church, you'd throw confetti, and probably the reception would be in the village hall, and all the presents would be lined up on the stage, so you could see them and admire them. And it was never difficult to know what to give the young couple for a present, because you always gave them 3 Pyrex dishes with lids on. That's quite straightforward. And then you'd go and have the tea. In my sister's case, for instance, they had the co-op catering service, and they had a ham tea for 8 shillings a head, which was very nice. And then the bride and groom would come and cut the cake, and then she would disappear, and she'd come back in her going-away suit, wouldn't she, in her going-away suit. And somebody in the meantime would have tied a few tin cans on the back of the car, and you'd go and wave them off, and they went off on their honeymoon. And you'd go back into the village hall, get your handbag and go home. It was all over by 6 o'clock. You know, and as far as what happened after that, when they got onto their honeymoon, well, it was never discussed. You know, the only thing my mother ever said to me was, never let your husband know you can shift the wardrobe on your own. Which wasn't much help, let me tell you. When you compare those old-fashioned weddings with modern weddings, the modern wedding seems a very complex event with layer upon layer of things that are put into place. You know, from the hen night and the stag night to the marquee and the flowers and the champagne and the food and the band and the honeymoon. It just seems to be very complex and very daunting for the young couple to arrange all that. And I also find that they go on very late at night, modern weddings. And I'm not, you probably wouldn't have noticed this, but I'm not as young as I used to be. And I get tired. I get very tired. And it's not really polite to leave before the bride and groom. And they're probably still out bopping on the dance floor. And I don't know, I just get really weary. So this is my poem. It's a bit cynical, do you mind? So, your daughter's getting married, and your fine athletic son. Well, send my love and warm congratulations to them, everyone. I wish them health and happiness and joyful expectation, but don't ask me to the wedding. Do not send the invitation. Now, it's not that I don't care or I'm too mean to send a gift. I just know that at the wedding, every grievance, every rift, every bitter family feud that simmered slowly down the years will come boiling to the surface after one too many beers. I do not have to be there, I can still describe the day. The best man, he'll be nervous. The vicar, he'll be gay. The ushers will be pimply. The babies will all shriek. And ex-wives and ex-husbands look with loathing and don't speak. Ah, the fragrance of the flowers, the stained glass like a jewel, the murmur of the organ and the bridesmaids minuscule. The shyness of the couple, their tenderness and tears. You'd never guess they'd lived together now for 7 years. I used to love the marriage service, knowing this old church had heard the same vows down the centuries, repeated word for word. But that's all out of fashion, just another thing to scrub. They made this up themselves on Friday evening down the pub. No Lord's Prayer, no familiar words, no blessing. It was odd. We gathered there in someone's sight, but I don't think it was God. Still, the church was bathed in sunshine. The steeple bells were pealing. The dress, it was expensive, and the neckline was revealing. In the shop, I loved my saucy feathered hat, I did. The sales girl said, delightful, and I paid 200 quid. But looking in the mirror as I locked the house to leave, I looked just like a turkey left behind on Christmas Eve. Me shoes are proving painful, they have made my toes go numb, and are holding out the promise of much greater things to come. Of course, they're things of beauty, stylish, colourful and sleek, but as I walk through the churchyard, I can hear me bunions creak. Ah, here comes a photographer. We're lined up like the royals, standing here so long he could have painted us in oils. Well, everybody's restless now. We're ready for the off, and snouts are getting anxious for a rummage in the trough. The couple cut the cake, and on the knife each placed a hand. The best man made a speech, but he was drunk and couldn't stand. We clapped for all the speakers, and their duty did not shirk. Although we couldn't hear the microphone, it didn't work. We're ready for the sausage rolls. We're ready for the ale. We're ready for the feast. No point in letting it get stale. I'm piling up my plate and then I'm going back for more to fortify myself before I get out on that floor. 3 things to fill your heart with dread and make your innards shrivel. A marquee and a disco and a DJ spouting drivel. He's turning up the volume, cranking up the flashing lights, and there's women dancing barefoot with their feet stuck through their tights. Old bones and hip replacements. They are grinding off the dust. Grandpa's doing a kind of geriatric pelvic thrust. The shake, the okey-cokey, the conga and the twist. And the whole pulsating bunch are getting absolutely intoxicated. Gyrating, undulating, oh, it's sweaty and it's hot. Separate and desperate, we're dancing on the spot. An elbow in the back, oh, a sharp stiletto in the shin, and there's lechery, treachery, darkly in the din. It's not polite to leave before the couple, it is said. And yet a vision rises of a warm and comfy bed, a nice electric blanket and a pillow soft and deep. The party rages on, but I wish I was at home asleep. So don't ask me to the wedding, I insist, it's for the best. You send my invitation to some bright and youthful guest, and for now, let's toast the couple. Tell them tales of my remorse. And in a couple of years, I'll come and drink to the divorce. Cheers. That was a bit cynical, really, wasn't it? That was a bit cynical, really. I'm not like that, really. That was just a bit of an aberration, shall we say, when I wrote that. I don't usually write cynical things, because I'm actually quite a romantic person, really. When I was a young woman, I used to think that love and falling in love and all that joy and excitement and anticipation, I used to think that was just for young people, you know. The idea of older people feeling anything like that was preposterous and not a little distasteful, you know. But I don't feel like that now. In fact, I don't think that we ever lose it. I don't think we ever lose that sort of romantic inclination and that longing for the excitement that you used to feel for somebody. And I believe that a vast percentage of women in this country are still waiting for the man they should have been with. Yes. But I did say that to an audience recently, and a man at the back shouted out, and he said, in quite an aggressive way, he said, "Yeah, that cuts both ways at all," he said. Which was very fair. This is my little romantic poem then, everybody. This is to counteract my cynical one. This is called I Still Haven't Given Up Hope. I still haven't given up hope, you know. I still await the day when my true romantic hero comes to carry me away. Well, I've been married 30 years. Some people find that long. But my husband's just a stopgap till the real one comes along. Then, like Lawrence of Arabia across the burning sand, I see him ride towards me and I take his outstretched hand. I see his pearly teeth, the flash of sunlight on enamel. And if love cannot sustain us, we shall have to eat the... And my final poem for this evening, everybody, is this one. And before I do it, I just want to thank you all very much indeed for coming along. It's been a real treat to talk to you, and you've laughed exactly where I would hope you'd laugh. And so thank you so much for coming, and I hope that it won't be too long before I'm back in this lovely theatre again. Now, what I don't want is for you to go home and feel sorry for me. I don't want you to go home and think, poor old Pam, her family's left home now, her boys have left home, she's there in the empty nest, thinking of what she used to have and has no longer got. You know, because I would like you to know that there are great compensations I have found in being back in the matrimonial home with my husband as we were at the outset. Great compensations, particularly at night. We never did it much, but now we do it every night. Well, married 30 years, in the end, you get it right. I don't mean to sound complacent, but we do it more and more. Yes, we clamber into bed and fall asleep, and then we snore. What did you think I meant? Sometimes we snore in unison. Sometimes we snore alone. I'm a soprano snorer, and he's a baritone. It never gets monotonous, each night a different sort. Some finish with a gargle. Others finish with a snort. Well, I only snore a bit, but once I couldn't snore at all. I suppose when I get going, you could hear me down the hall. But my husband is remarkable. His snoring is so loud that beneath our bedroom window, he's attracting quite a crowd. It's true, he is phenomenal. And some nights when he snores, my glass of water travels right across the chest of drawers. And if he adds a flourish, like a splutter, shout, or cough, I've seen the glass of water jump a mile and topple off. I could dance across the bedroom wearing just a feather boa. He would still lie flat upon his back and snore like Krakatoa. So let's hear it for the snorers now, wherever they may dwell. Just lie back and enjoy. Good night, sweet dreams, my friends. Sleep well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.